All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. This is our first Rita B. Leahy series panel for this academic year. I'm Susan Martin, the Program Director for Doctoral Career and Professional Development, and I want to quickly introduce two of my staff members. Charlene is here today. Charlene Kuo is our Doctoral Career Consultant. You'll see her in Doctoral Career Navigator, and I'm going to talk about that after the panel ends. And many of you have already met April Fuller, the Graduate Assistant for Doctoral Career Development. You will see her in our Foundational Week workshops. She does 9 of them each semester, and she also has office hours to do resume critiques. So that's our team. This Rita B. Leahy series is really all about exposing doc students to careers outside the academy. There will be 3 more sessions, 1 more this semester on federal careers. We'll have Maryland alumni who are working in federal government. Then in January, as part of our Alumni Week, we are going to be featuring alumni that work in the Maryland biotech industry. And then we're wrapping up the series in March with a panel focused on using those communication and qualitative skills. We're going to have a panelist who's working in user experience, marketing, and communication. So that seems like a little bit of a hodgepodge, but there's some method to that. So today we are focused on careers in consulting. And I had a little tagline. We're going to demystify careers in consulting. We are so fortunate to have 2 Maryland alumni with us. First, we have Dr. Han Hu, who is an alumna from economics. She has 10 plus years of consulting experience. She's currently with McKinsey and Company. We also have someone who is starting as a new consultant this year, who's already started with Boston Consulting Group. Ruben Acevedo is he has his PhD from mechanical engineering, and he's a first-year consultant with Boston Consulting Group. And he and I were chatting that I met him actually 3 years ago, and it's wonderful to see someone step into their new role. And then last, we actually have a soon-to-be doctoral graduate and alum, Brandon Gayton. He is earning his doctorate in bioengineering, and he's the president and co-founder of the Maryland Graduate Consulting Club. And that club has done a lot of work to help educate students about careers in this area. So I thought it would be nice to have an opportunity for students to really see how individuals have progressed in this incredible world of consulting. So I'll let Han go ahead and go first to share what she wants, and then Ruben will go next, followed by Brandon. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Susan, for the introduction, and nice to meet you all. My name is Han Hu. I am now in McKinsey's DC office. I'm the org senior expert, meaning I focus my client services in the organizational and talent space, serving HR clients and related topics on organizational design, talent development. This is related to my PhD program at the University of Maryland because I chose labor economics as my major, given my passion in the volume of data we have in labor economics. I don't know if anyone here is from economics or related programs. You will know that labor is the most empirical field across all the economics field. And back then, data scientist was not even a term. Quant is only limited to investment banking. But over the time, the data availability becomes so much bigger. So it created a lot of opportunities for the research. When I was in graduate school, that triggered my interest in this area. And when I graduated, I was looking for a academic job because I see one of the questions that you had or talking points is to describe the change in the thinking process of the career plan. When I enrolled in the program, I thought everybody graduating from the PhD program would be in academic. Both of my parents are professors in the university. That was my understanding of the PhD program. But when I graduated, I see the different options. And I was also constrained by location because my husband started working in DC already. And I know as the econ PhD, you don't have a choice of where you go to work if you choose academic. So I have to choose between either I follow my academic dream or I followed my husband to stay with him in the same location. I didn't struggle too much between selecting the two, but I would say I hoped I had some kind of forum like this to learn more about the different opportunities outside of academia. Because when I talk to professors and fellow students, we know way more about the academia world than the non-academia world. Even for economics, where we have more non-academia opportunities in World Bank, in United Nations, in the different think tanks, I still feel we didn't have enough of the input. So when I graduated, I joined consulting as my first job. I did not try McKinsey back then because I feel it's very strategy focused, and I wanted to do more people-related topics to match my labor economics background. So I interviewed at other consulting firms, and I chose Mercer, which is the biggest HR consulting firm, and they had their research arm with interdisciplinary team between economics and psychologists. And I met a psychology professor there who was the co-founder of the team. He was also a professor from the University of Maryland. So I saw the link and I really enjoyed their work, which is frontier back then. This is years before Google introduced the idea of people analytics. They combined the deep research from economics and psychologists to apply to talent management, using advanced analytics to improve how you attract and develop people and how you retain people and creating the engaging environment. So I worked at Mercer for 10 years, and then I saw McKinsey started doing people analytics. I feel it was a great opportunity to expand my impact, because by then I feel it's not only in HR you can apply these approach to improve people's life, to improve the company's performance. It goes beyond HR to have a bigger impact. So I applied at McKinsey and I joined there. So now my work focuses on advising clients on strategic topics like where do you want to set your next global research center based on the talent market comparison, to more operational questions like do you want to pay your hourly workers by piece rate, or by more performance-driven approach. Those are all informed by our analytics insights to make a more scientific decision on the business questions, which were used to be more driven by experience and gut feeling and qualitative input. So I feel very proud of my field, and I see this field also exploding in terms of how many companies are now applying this more rigorous approach to their talent and organizational management. The last thing I want to say is to the point of how did my doctor program prepare me for this career? The solid quant foundational skills were the first steps that brought me into this field and made impact with several Fortune 100 clients in my first few years in consulting, built my confidence to apply at McKinsey and progress and leading to a successful career here, which was not easy. So if there are questions about the challenges along the way, I have a lot of stories to share. Not to scare you, Ruben, but that's the reality. We all know academia career is very challenging. Consulting career is also challenging in different ways. So happy to share more details. Welcome your questions. So I'll pause here. I didn't answer all the questions in your list, Susan, but I want to save enough time for audience to ask questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Go ahead, Ruben.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm kind of coming in at it from like a more recent experience. So I'm from California originally. I went to University of Maryland to get my PhD in mechanical engineering. I still know a couple of people like Hayazine. I just graduated in May, and I started working at Boston Consulting Group starting August. So I've only really been working for 2 months. But for me, I originally wanted to do like my PhD because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, which is not like the best reason to get a PhD, but it's like the honest reason. I decided I thought maybe being a professor would be interesting. So I, pursued engineering PhD for that reason, and then ended up realizing halfway that I didn't really like the academia route. And I actually ended up coming to one of these events, and that's actually where I met Susan. And I even met with Susan to have her help me with my resume to get into consulting, because I didn't even know anything about consulting. coming from an engineering background. So that was kind of like how I got introduced to consulting. I think BCG ended up doing a campus event where, and that was the first time I've ever heard that you could, I always knew what consulting was, but I didn't know that you could get into it with a PhD, especially in like a non-business background. So once I found out that that was possible, I was like, all right, what do I have to do to get into like one of these like bigger companies? And so that's where Susan was like, oh, you should, LinkedIn message people. So go on to like your like your university page, find who's working at the companies you want to work for. Actually, it's like a funny story. I ended up finding someone that works at BCG from University of Maryland. His name is David. And on my first case, he's actually one of the consultants that I'm paired up with. And it was like, oh, like I already knew you. I was like, yeah, how's it going? So you just never really know who you're gonna really like what people you meet early on when you're just starting and like what impact they will have later on. I've even like, yeah, so that's kind of like something that's kind of funny with all this. I think one of the big things that PhD helps with like consulting is, at least, this kind of sounds funny me saying it, I really only have 2 months of experience, but from what I can tell is as a PhD student, you're really comfortable running your own thing. And like, I think a big thing, at least like from what my bosses are telling me that they look for is like you taking ownership of modules and kind of like not waiting for someone to tell you what to do. And I think like being a PhD is like, I don't know, I feel like we're kind of like uniquely suited for that because like that is what we do. Like our professor just kind of gives us like an arbitrary goal and you have to find out how to get there. I think what I'm still struggling on is doing that fast, but I think I more or less know that with the PhD background, okay, I know how to like solve a problem on my own more or less and not have to wait for like specific guidance. I'm trying to think of, I'm looking at your questions. I think that is pretty much it that I want to say. I'll just leave the rest for questions. But yeah, you could think of me as like someone that just recently got into the recruiting like just finished the recruiting process, and like any early stage kind of questions would be for me. Yeah, I did apply to bridge to BCG. So actually, I could maybe just with that question. So especially if you know that you want to do this, I would recommend applying to all like the three, like McKinsey, BCG, and Bain. They all have some sort of doctoral like summer program. I think some of the other consulting firms will also hire PhDs, but at least from my initial like search, it wasn't clear that they had specific programs that like kind of bring PhDs into the business world as much as those three companies did. I ended up missing the ball for the Bain one because they have like different starting dates. I did go to bridge to BCG, which is a really good, if you get in, it's nice because you're guaranteed a first round interview. And then McKinsey also has something similar. I think it's called like Insight or Diversity Connect. I'm pretty sure those are, I don't know, maybe Han can tell, like say the exact word, but like, yes, they also have those. It's not, you could still get in without participating in these programs. But I have found that a lot of the companies kind of like prioritize the people that got into these programs, and then whoever they have, like if they still have openings left, then they'll dig in. Again, I don't know because I'm not in like the recruiting process. This is just like kind of, I'm still kind of an outsider when it comes to that stuff, but that is like my impression that I got. Yeah, so I'll leave that to, I'll let Brandon talk now, and then I can answer any other questions later.
All right. Let's see, I guess I'll give my perspective from somebody who's not actually in a consulting role yet, but I guess I give more perspective on the preparation to get there and also just try to illuminate on what resources are available on our end as the Graduate Consulting Club. So to give a background on myself, I came to Maryland as an undergrad. I worked in industry for a few years, and then I think I still had that research brain going on. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a head researcher in industry or something. And then I decided that wasn't for me as time went on. What I found that I enjoyed more was getting involved with the business side of things. So I was part of a startup studio where I first found out, what is market sizing? Like, what is customer discovery? All these general business-like topics. I found that I enjoyed it. And as time went on, I found that, oh, consulting seems to be something for me. Again, I can only speak to my impressions of it. because I'm not actually there yet. But from everything that I've learned so far, it's, you put in two camps, right? You have academia, which is longer paced, you're really concentrating on one specific thing. And you have a limited number of projects as well, that you mostly delegate to people who are under you. When you're a consultant, you're in more of that hands-on role, you have a lot higher direct impact. So whatever impact you have, a client comes to you because they have a problem and they want to solve it. So it's much more direct impact. And you're working on a lot of projects during the year. It's not like a PhD where maybe you have 3 projects over the course of 5, 6 years or whatever. From what I understand, it's more along the lines of 4 to 6 projects every year, depending on the lengths that you're on those. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Ruben or Han. So from there, we found that I started the Graduate Consulting Club because there's a lot of students like you all here who are interested in consulting, but what is actually involved in getting into consulting? I think it's really different than most other career paths, especially compared to academia. So we started putting groups together, kind of going, okay, let's tell people what consulting is instead of just leaving it very vague. I think the title of Demystified for this panel is very apt. So, what is it, what's involved in it, but also how do you break into it? I like one example I could say as well, you don't really do case interviewings in many other industry types, while in consulting, you need to know how to perform cases when you're interviewing. If you don't know how to case, it's going to be near impossible to land a job in the field. But that's something that can be taught to an individual. So that's not anything to stress about. So from there, we've been active since February of 2020. We host various types of events, either like panel events, kind of like this one, where you talk to current consultants to try to get a vibe for what the field is like, what challenges are there, is it for me? We also host events about preparing you for the actual interview process and application process. So, some events we're planning on this semester are, how to network, how to prepare your resume, because resumes for consulting are way different than resumes for CVs, way different. CVs have 7 or 8 pages. For a consulting resume, 1 page. You want that 1-page resume, for example. We also do case interview workshops to kind of give you an overview on how to actually perform one of these cases. And on top of that, we actually offer external experiences. So we have a pipeline between us and the tech transfer department. They give us certain projects. They say, hey, for example, one that I was on was, we're trying to decide whether we should invest $30,000 into our alumni the Graduate Consulting Club. Yes, we encourage all types. If you're a postdoc, a graduate, we appear to people who are graduate students and beyond. So if you fall in that camp, more than happy. I will also drop a link to the Slack channel in the chat. So anybody who wants to join can join. But what was I saying? Oh, yes. So we have a partnership with the tech transfer office. So they give us projects. One, for example, should they invest $30,000 into patenting a new NMR machine? So it's a mix of things you're familiar with, like, oh, I get to do some research, read papers, what's out there in the field, but also it involves sometimes calling people up and trying to find out what the price of the current machines are, how concentrated is the market, what's the market size, things of that nature, and putting together like a slide deck and executive summary going, like, hey, this is what we think you should do with this product. You should invest. And I think that gives you at least a small idea of what it's like to be in consulting. Like if you hate doing that, then maybe it's not for you, but if you like it, maybe investigate further. And I'd say that the things that we've performed so far have been pretty successful. One of our e-board members actually got an offer with BCG. Actually, I guess I'll just say, so I actually have an offer from BCG that I accepted not too long ago. So, and I think the other e-board member, I need to catch up with her, but I know that she's gotten interview offers at least 50% of the places she has applied to. And so I think we prepare students pretty well in the before part when you're applying, as well as the during part when it comes to actually interviewing. So if you're interested in consulting and you want to learn more, of course, listen to the actual consultants that are here for now. But again, please leverage our club as a resource.
That's great. So you kind of are seeing the spectrum here. This is a great time for individuals who are here to ask some questions. Could I ask Han to talk a little bit about the skills? You've been watching new consultants come in for a bit now. And what would you say are those skills and attributes that really make great consultants and happy consultants?
That's a great question, Susan. I think it's more important to answer the part of making a happy consultant than a good consultant, because unhappy consultants cannot be good consultants. So I feel the first question for the audience to think about is, if you are considering consulting, why? And why do you like it? By talking to people around you who are doing this, or who have been done this, or know people who do this, to get more idea of what it looks like and feels like. Make sure you really enjoy it because of the day-to-day work, not because, hey, X number of years down the road, I can become a partner, or the name sounds fancy. Well, I think compared to academia titles, it may not be as fancy, but making sure you really like the work, especially the day-to-day work, not just the name. That's very important, because to me, I did spend a lot of time thinking about, do I want to go teach in research, or do I want to go help the companies? And I didn't have that answer for quite a few years right after graduation. I know I enjoy my work, but I don't know how many years I will enjoy. So do spend time thinking about that, and it's okay if you change your mind. That's the first thing I want to say before I talk about the skills. It's very important about your passion alignment. Then about the skills, in my case, because I'm very specifically applying my economics modeling expertise in consulting, so that skill set is critical. I think Ruben and Brandon, you can share different perspectives in your fields, that the domain knowledge may matter more. In my case, my domain knowledge of economics mattered, but more so my advanced analytics skill matter, because in our area, it's not only economics, it is economics, organization, behavior, psychology, very interdisciplinary. So that's one skill, the technical skill. The other skills the consulting firms look for, if I think about when I interview people, one is what we call personal impact. This includes communication, but also includes a lot more beyond our traditional definition of communication. You need to, of course, articulate your thought, be concise, be logical, all of that. But in consulting also requires a little more of the influencing others thinking. So it's like, I'm thinking about my fourth grader convincing writing. It's about that kind of skill, that you feel confident about your opinion and you feel comfortable projecting yourself and influencing others in a tailored way, because your different audience would take a different approach differently. So that's the communication part. And then another part is problem solving. That's a broad category. That's where, Brandon, to your point of working through the case, we want to see how you approach problem and solve problem. The key there is not to get the answer right. The key there is to how to approach the question, and how do you decompose the question, look for help when you need, seek for inputs where you think it's critical for making the assumption, test your assumption. So that process of thinking, how you're thinking, is 10 times more important than the answer you gave. You may have heard that elsewhere. So if you wanted to apply for consulting, take some time to practice. It's nothing comparable in terms of difficulty to your dissertation writing. So don't worry too much about that. But the skills you are developing in your program right now, on all your domain knowledge, technical skills, and logical thinking, writing, influencing, will all matter in consulting.
Excellent. I want to invite people to turn their cameras on and either drop questions in the chat box, or actually just unmic yourself, turn your camera on and ask some questions. I don't see anyone.
Looks like Azin has her.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Go ahead. Thanks, Charlene.
Thank you to all of the speakers for sharing their career journey with us. It was very informative. So my question is along the question that Dr. Martin asked. I was wondering, if you weren't working or you weren't interested in this consulting job, what other positions or jobs would you be considering?
Yeah, I can take this question first because that was kind of I mean, to get into like consulting, I think in these firms is pretty difficult in terms like it's pretty competitive. And so I had like, all right, if I don't get in here, like I had like all these backup plans. So like for me, I was very interested in consulting, and then if not consulting, then I wanted to do like something like public policy. Actually, I ended up one of the events I went to was like a public policy version of this. And then if I couldn't do that, I would want to like try to see if I could work at a startup, like as a use my technical side about it. So anything that was kind of geared towards more organizations, people, having my like technical degree like could be helpful, but it wasn't like I need to use it. So that was kind of the way that I approached it. And you know, I think all three have like different pros and cons. I think I like prioritized consulting as number one, but I definitely, if I wouldn't have gotten in, what I would have done was I would have like reapplied the next year, because you get hired in a year before you graduate usually. So that kind of is nice, because if you don't get in, you kind of can try again. And then you could also find other jobs as well. So like for me, like that one summer, I was like, I'm only going to focus on consulting. If I don't get into consulting, then the next year I'm going to like do my dissertation and also like look at different job opportunities, LinkedIn more people from different industries. Luckily I didn't have to do that, but that was kind of like my game plan going in.
Thank you.
Han, do you have some thoughts about that too? Because it's so interesting. You said that, you know, you thought you were going to have this academic career. Could you say a little about the career progression in consulting, and maybe some of the thoughts that you've had along the way about how your skills map on to other careers?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Early days after graduate school, I joined as analyst associate, forgot the junior level. And the first 2-3 years, I did a lot of the analysis to support our client deliverables and influencing their decision-making on the critical talent and organizational topics. Those are the years I was debating, am I in the right job, that I spent 6 years on economic research, and now these analysis do not seem to be that sophisticated or challenged per se, technically. But I started enjoying more of the impact I see, because with my analysis, I can see how clients making their very important decisions, like the example I shared, selecting their next research center globally. This is for a top technology company, when they were debating across 50 different countries. And we need to compare the talent market beyond what we can see from the data, but looking much deeper to understand the dynamics of even the forecasted view of the talent supply in these markets and the competition for the talent. So I see that it doesn't require the most sophisticated modeling I used in my dissertation, but it does require a much deeper level of thinking on what does it mean if we choose this location and the other location, the pros and cons and the business impact. Those are billion-dollar impact, and we are directly influencing CEOs of the Fortune 100, CFOs of the Fortune 100. I feel more responsibility, and I feel more of the impact that I'm making, and immediately. And I know my papers could also influence very important decision making for policymakers, but it takes a long time. And I'm very glad to see my work is generating more immediate impact in the business setting. So I started seeing more of the value of my work, and I devoted more of my time. And that's why I say happy consultants are very important, because I see my impact, and I started enjoying it more, and I started being more engaged, and I put in more of my time, and I progressed faster once I started doing that. And I started also influencing more broadly than Initially, I focused very much on the talent supply and demand across the locations for the location strategy. Later on, started influencing the whole talent management, including where do you source people, how do you set up your compensation, how do you grow people. And more recently, because of the automation happening, a lot of the companies have to lay off their people. And that's a real dilemma, because we don't emotionally want employers to lay off people, but we also know if they don't, they suffer from their performance, and there are tripling effects to many things. So we have to find smart ways. How do we reskill these people so they can keep their job, but the companies are also benefiting from that by not losing their market share? So the problems are becoming more and more complicated and require me to also pull expertise from other areas. Like myself cannot solve this problem. So I pull in senior partners from other practices. I bring my economics background, they bring their business background or their industry specific knowledge. So I get to learn more about what others do in their life. And that part is also very interesting to me, that I'm also always curious to know what non-economic people do. And before, my circle is my economics fellows. But now I get to know many more people in pharmaceutical, by the way, pharmaceutical and there's another area. Pharmaceutical hires a lot of PhDs and MDs, and I get to learn their career path. Many people, similar to maybe some of you here, that they never heard about McKinsey during graduate school. Like my MD fellows, they are doctors before they joined McKinsey, and they said back in medical school, nobody knows who is McKinsey, and nobody wanted to work there. But more and more so, as consulting firms make more impact in these areas, I think we started attracting more people from graduate school, from medical school, from law school. So that is a transition not only for myself personally, but I see that across the board in other fields. So I hope that gets to some of your questions. It digressed a little bit, I know.
Fantastic. It sounds like you're glad you stuck it out there. There was this beginning point where you weren't so sure, but the complexity and the impact that you have right now seems like something you weren't even aware would happen, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, we've had some questions come in. I'm going to toss this one to Brandon, and then the other panelists can chime in. So are there some particular books or resources that you are finding exceptionally helpful in developing thinking and communication skills, or the other skills that the consulting firms are going to be looking for? What kind of resources should people be using?
Okay, so I can talk from my specific experiences and also what I personally recommend to other people. I'll try to drop them in the chat after I'm done talking about them so people can Google them on their own as well. But there's specifically, I think when you prepare for the case interview, it starts kind of teaching you how to consultants think in a certain way. So I think that's a good way to go about it. And the way I prepared for cases, for example, was there's this book called, I think it's called Hacking the Case Interview. That's one of the primary ones that I use to get going. I know some other people like Victor Chang, and Case in Point has gotten very mixed reviews. I didn't use it personally. Victor Chang's book, I forgot what Victor Chang's book is called, but I can post it in the chat afterwards. Huh?
Case Secrets, I'm pretty
Case
sure.
Secrets, okay. I've heard that one's pretty good.
Or something, yeah.
Okay, and then Han just posted up another book. So there's a lot of books out there. In order to prepare you for case interviewing, I would say it's talk to a few consultants or to get an idea of what they used and what they find valuable as well, because I also think there's so many materials out there. It's kind of hard to parse apart the stuff that works versus the stuff that doesn't work. So I would, yeah, I like Hacking the Case Interview. Victor Chang's book is good, and mixed reviews on Case in Point. I think that sums it up. Also, there's another online resource that I enjoyed, called Crafting Cases. I think it's relatively new, but they have a lot of free material. I would say don't pay for it. I think their general one-shot course that's free does a pretty good job of kind of walking through your case and how to think about it. And again, I'll post that on later. Any things that are beyond just preparing for cases. One, again, talking to current consultants, getting a feel for what they find important, how they tackle problems, I think will start to influence your mind in terms of, how to think more like a consultant. Doing external activities that also increase your consulting like skills. So anything that develops your business skills, soft skills would be super helpful as well. So joining like a startup studio like I did early on. I know the business school has like the impact consulting fellowships, for example, as well. Those are pretty good to apply to. It's consulting and it'll be outside of your wheelhouse probably, but it'll help build those consulting skills. And again, those tech transfer projects that we ourselves offer people are a good way to not just build skills, but also build that mentality. Apart from that, I just like reading certain like newspapers and journals like The Economist and Wall Street Journal, stuff like that, since those are more business heavy, just to get a feel for what's going out there. I think that sums up for me. I don't know if Ruben or Han have any other suggestions to chime in.
Yeah, I think for me, like Victor Chung, he was like, I guess he was the one. I think you kind of just have to pick one and kind of really like just do it thoroughly. But the reason I liked his was he has a thing called like Look Over My Shoulder, which like he essentially does, it's just like a podcast essentially. And he'll give the case to 3 different people. And it's the same case, and he'll be like, this is a bad example, this is a decent example, and this is a good example. And so I think for me, like kind of just, you know, because you can read the books and stuff, but like just seeing like example, I mean, you should read the books first and then seeing the examples. And then a big thing too is practicing in front of people. Like I would say that's probably the most important thing, because even though you can know how to do it, you're gonna get out and you're gonna like, and you're gonna like mess up. And so that's gonna come off. And like you really don't get good at that until you've like done like maybe 20 or something. And then that also puts in context more like you also just see how other people are doing. So like in a cynical way, it's how's the competition doing? In a good way, it's like how are you helping each other to get better? There was actually a couple of people that I was practicing from different schools. So I wish Brandon's club existed when I was applying. I was like 6 months too early. So I didn't have anyone really, I felt like I was really in the dark. And so I would kind of reach out to different universities. And a lot of the people, like maybe like half of the people I practiced with regularly ended up getting into BCG as well, which was kind of cool because now like some of them are in my office like, hey, like we're friends even though we never, like we only met via the computer. Yeah, so I guess to sum up, I think like Look Over My Shoulder is a good, anything that kind of like this, like the interview is very verbal. So anything that gives you like verbal examples is really helpful. And then practicing just to get you know, comfortable facing in front of pressure.
And Han, what happens as you progress? You know, Ruben just stepped in, but as you look back over the past 10 years, how did what was in these books reflect the skill set and the techniques that you use over the course of your career?
I think the skills in the books helped more in early career than in later career because it diversifies more in later career. People can pursue quite different paths in later career versus first 2-3 years, everybody analyst, consultant, even getting to the manager level, that's pretty much the same across. But then later careers, you can focus more on client work. You can focus more on knowledge and research. You can focus more on building solutions. So there are more options, and you see people diversify, and interesting, that creates more opportunities. And that's also where we attract a lot of the experienced hire. I think that's relevant in the conversation here. But in terms of your longer term growth, I see that as a benefit because it's not like a one defined path you have to follow your whole career. In consulting, you can pivot left and right because you will get to meet different people from very different backgrounds in your later career. So I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, Susan, but I feel the skills from the books are critical for early career. But don't worry if you don't have all of them matched, or if you don't feel you wanted to develop all those skills. Like, I don't think I'm a typical consultant when I was graduating. I'm not a native English speaker. I learned English as a second language. That's definitely not my strength compared to my polished McKinsey colleagues, but I bring my other strengths in advanced analytics in HR, which is quite a wide space. There are no more than 10 people in the world who has done this longer time than me. So that's one thing the firm would value. That's one thing the client would value. So if you don't have all those skills, don't worry, think about what is your spike and focus on your spike. I know it's more difficult in earlier career because they are looking for kind of the same profile, but keep doing what you are really passionate about and good at, and one day it will pay off.
Yeah, and I think I want to like I saw this on the questions, and I think like it should be addressed, and how someone explained it to me I think was helpful, so I kind of just want to say, so like in terms of the long working hours, like you hear that it's like 60, and like, so I knew that consulting is a lot of hours, but like I didn't know what like that meant. Like, what does 60 mean? Like, what does it feel like? And so the way that someone explained it to me, and like I've been finding it to be true, is like essentially you will always have like a meeting in the morning to like tell you this is what you're going to do that day. So that's like at 9, and then you'll have a meeting at 5 to kind of say like this is what you did. So like normally like you probably want to like read emails or something a little before that 9 a.m. meeting. So you'll probably start at like 8, for example. And then you have till 5, like the meeting at 5 will probably run till like 5:30. And then pretty much at that end of that meeting, you get like homework assigned that you have to do before the next 9 a.m. meeting. And so the way that it ends up like working out is like maybe you'll take a break for like 2 hours. So like let's say you stop work at 6, take a break till like 8. And then like you'd work till like 10 or 10:30, 11, and you would do that. That's like considered like pretty average. Like when it's like worse is like that instead of stopping at like 10, 10:30, you'd like stop at like 12, and like the really, really bad days is like you'd stop at like, and so from what I've heard is that's usually how it is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then on Thursdays, everything is the same until after 6. You're not really expected to work after 6 on Thursdays. If it's like a tough case, tough week, you are expected to work on Tuesdays or on Thursday evenings. But in general, they like to keep that as like, that's like, you know, family time. And then Fridays is like the most easy day where like you would start at, I don't know, 9, and then you would end at 5, or it's like, that's like the more like most normal day. On like a really hard case, like you'd be expected to do client work that day as well. But in general, it's more like kind of like you kind of get all the little errands that you didn't get through the week, you kind of do on Friday. And that's like typically, from my understanding, how it was done when we were traveling all the time. Now that it's like working from home mostly, they're like my specific case team, they are trying, even though we're not traveling, they're trying to keep that same structure where like Thursday evenings is kind of like a chiller, like you are not expected to work, and then Fridays are more chill, but Monday through Wednesday are like the intense days. So like the way that I kind of, especially starting off, like I almost like wake up and like when it's 9, I feel like I'm like on your mark, it's set, like you know, so like I'm like, all right, like I'm gonna go till like 6, and then you kind of stop for 2 hours, then you kind of like just do like your like end of day, you kind of just want to do enough work that the next morning you're like, oh, I didn't do anything. So you just want to like make sure that you did stuff. And then, but like that's kind of like intense for like 3 days. And then Thursday, like today, I'm like, all right, it's going to be 5 after this, like I'm done. And then Friday, I'm expecting to be chilled. But that's kind of like more or less, like for me, when someone explained it to me, it really made me feel like it's kind of doable. Maybe you're hearing it and be like, nope, like, are you kidding me? Like that sounds off. But like, I like the fact that it was like, all right, it's just like really intense, just 3 days. 2 days are kind of more chill. And then the weekends I hear are very protected usually. And even if like, let's say it's a really hard case, like people would rather work more during the week to really make sure that Saturdays and Sundays you don't work at all. Han, I don't know, maybe you can like shine light, but that was like.
No, I really like that, Ruben. I wish someone told me this clearly. When I saw the 60-hour per week job posting, I still remember, is it Tidings Hall for economics department in our hallway on the job posting saying 60 hours per week. That really scared me. But if someone like how you said it, Ruben, told me in this way, I think it's much more digestible. And also I wanted to add that 3 days, Monday through Wednesday of the long hours would also include a lot of team events. Like on Wednesday night, we usually go out as a team dinner. So we would make that time to connect and share personal stories and really bond. Even now we're not traveling, we're still trying to make that happen. And once in a while, we have also team events with clients. So every month on a Tuesday or Wednesday, we will also spend time. So those hours would include those team bonding events. It's not always crunching numbers, making slides and presentation and meetings. And weekends are also very well protected. Most of the partners I work with are very reasonable. If we have to work on a Sunday afternoon, let's say, they will say, team, we're very sorry for that. And next Friday, you only need to work half day to give you back the half day that you had to work on a Sunday. That's at least my experience. I know there are variations from team to team, from company to company, but I think at least the trend is to be more and more reasonable and protecting the personal life, because eventually that increases engagement and productivity. So I don't know why we don't want to do that. If we plan more wisely, we don't have to do weekend work.
Yeah, at least like for me, starting like the case, there's like, you do like what are norms and stuff. And like one of the questions was like, if we had to work later, would you rather work later on a Thursday night or Sunday? And you kind of like click the box. So I think it's kind of like nice that like it's a thing, like it does seem like it's a lot of hours, but they are trying to like at least keep some sacred hours like where you're not allowed to work and stuff. So I like that, I guess, going in.
Great. We did have a question come in just about the overall timing of the recruiting cycle. So I don't know who wants to take that. Is it, Han, do you want to talk about how McKinsey?
I actually don't know the detailed timing. The recruiters manage that. And for different sales in the firm, we also have different timing, but
Okay.
Ruben, your latest experience should reflect the at scale hiring for fresh consultants.
And Brandon too, yeah.
Yeah, and Brandon, please go ahead.
Well, Ruben, you were hired right during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, so I guess like I would kind of like separate it into two kind of main deadlines, and like depending on the companies, they'll vary between like 3 weeks from each other, more or less. But like there's going to be the deadline to apply to get into these like summer like workshops that like will guarantee you like a first round interview, which is huge in itself. So, and like the good thing is if you don't get it into like for example, I applied to the McKinsey summer workshop, didn't get in, but then I still got a first round interview in the summer. So there's two deadlines. It's like the summer workshop deadline, which will happen around March, but like definitely look into it, because like, so for example, I was able to make the deadline for BCG and McKinsey, but like the Bain one was like a little earlier, and like I just like couldn't apply. So like, but that's going to be around that time, and then the actual like applying is probably going to be around July, and then the interviews happen to be like around September, late August. Is like, these are all kind of like general like things, but that's like the deadlines you want. And like, even if you don't get into the summer programs, you can still get first round interviews. But it is nice getting the first round interview when you're like, knowing that you have, like, you're for sure gonna be in front of someone, so you better prepare. Like that's like a lot of motivation, because it is a lot of work to kind of get case ready. And so I think that's like one of the benefits of why they offer you like a first round interview, is so like you kind of know, all right, like all this work isn't going to go potentially to waste. Because what would suck is if you spend like, I don't know, like 100 hours practicing for a case and you still don't get an interview. And like that happens. Like I had some friends that I was practicing with, and like they ended up never getting an interview. So that's really tough. But so definitely I would recommend applying to the summer programs, and then if you don't, reapply. I don't know, Brandon, do you have like, I mean, you just did it, so what would you say?
So I would say it's variable, like Han was saying. So I think the big three, so in terms of like McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, all theirs fall around the same time. McKinsey this year had their applications end a month earlier. So I think they were done collecting resumes around like mid-June, while BCG and Bain stopped collecting around mid-July-ish. And that's for the actual job. Like I missed all of the deadlines for so I didn't actually go through the Bridge to Anything program. I just applied straight into it. So I think follow Ruben's advice on those, be ready for those by March of next year, and definitely do it. Even though I got the position, having that peace of mind of having the interview is huge. But apart from that, I think another thing to discuss is that there's a lot of other consulting firms besides Bain, BCG, and McKinsey that are also looking to, for consultants. And the array is really wide. So one of the things we're working on now is actually trying to seeing if we can put together a list of consulting firms that hire PhDs. It's not up yet, but it's currently being worked on. And just off the top of my head, for example, if you're into life science consulting, LEK hires people who have their PhDs in some sort of life science position, and they're a pretty good firm and they have a pretty good reputation as well. Same thing, like EY Parthenon is recruiting life science consultants as well for their firm, and that's like the strategy arm for Ernst & Young, and they have a pretty good reputation. There's Simon Kucher & Partners, there's Mars & Co. There's a lot of consulting firms out there, I think right now, and they all have different application cycles. I would again say that those big three have like hard stop deadlines. Like if you don't get your resume in by mid-July, then unfortunately you're kind of out of luck until the next cycle picks up, unless they explicitly state that they're hiring for that same year for those like post-grad positions. But a lot of other firms are a bit softer, or their deadlines come later. EY Parthenon, for example, their life science consulting position closed on October 3rd. So there's still time to apply for that one if you're planning on graduating next year. LEK was 2 weeks after the end of BCG. Clearview, which is another healthcare consulting firm, was 2 weeks after that. And there's a bunch of other consulting firms that don't have tight deadlines. It's more so we put out stuff, people apply to it, and we fill the slots, then it's closed. So if you want to get into consulting, start preparing, I would say, a year before you're ready to graduate, especially if you want to have the biggest breadth of offers, a year and a half, I would say, if you want the biggest breadth of offers. But even if you're not there yet, like if you're looking for jobs now and you're applying, graduating like next year, like in May or something, there's still plenty of opportunities to do so in other firms, good firms.
Brenton, I'm really glad that you raised that issue, especially in this DC area, where many of the clients are federal agencies, right? The consulting world would look different in New York City or in the Bay Area. But I think with remote work, a lot of geographical things are being broken down now. I see Han saying, yeah. So clearly you're seeing that the value of getting involved in the Graduate Consulting Club. Another point I wanted to make was after tonight's panel, you have opportunities to reach out and learn much more from Maryland alumni and others. So I would really want to encourage all of you to do that. I really want to be mindful of everyone's time, and I'd like to give each of our consultants the opportunity to give one last piece of advice, and then I will go ahead and stop the recording. I'll hang around and answer a few more questions if anyone has questions about career services. So last words of advice, and let's go in reverse order. We'll go Brandon, Ruben, you're still in the middle there, and Han.
All right, I'll try to keep mine quick, but I think one thing that was touched upon, but to also emphasize, if you're interested in consulting, first, join the consulting club, and two, network. Talk to people inside of the firms. Those people talk to each other as well. So if you come off as really enthusiastic and that you really want to join the firm, I think that also shows like during the interview process and could potentially even come under consideration. But granted, I'm talking from somebody who is on the outside technically still, even though I'm going to be in there at some point next year. But I've heard that people knew that I got the job, for example, before I even knew I got the job. So network if you want to be in consulting, especially if it's the firm that you're interested in.
Sorry, I know we're short on time, but do you think I can ask a quick question bouncing off of that? Sorry, Susan, I cannot hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, Yurian. Let's let them finish their comments and then we'll go ahead with the question, okay? Thanks.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's actually funny. I knew that Brandon got in before Brandon, because someone was like, oh, I just interviewed someone from Maryland. And they're like, what's his name? So Brandon's like, I know that guy. But yeah, So I guess I guess for me, like my advice is to start early and to have like backup plans if you don't get in. And also feel free to kind of, I don't know, like if you are like committed to doing this and like, you know, make that like, let your like interviewers know too, like if you do get an interview. Like for me, I was like very determined that I wanted to get into this kind of field. And so I have like a 2-year plan to make that happen. So I would just, you know, do that, you know, just have backup plans. If you don't get in the first time, there's still a lot of things you can do to still get in eventually.
And then Han?
Yeah, you covered the points that I felt very important. So I'll try to say something different, though I agree that the networking is very important, not only to show your own passion, but also to gather a lot of information beyond what the website and events like this can give you. So do talk to people. The only other thought I would share is be yourself in your whole interview and recruiting process. Don't try to be pretending to be the perfect consultant that you are told to be. Be yourself, show your strengths, show your passion. That's the most touching part, I think, in the conversations that will show your love of the job and your real strengths, even though if at that moment it's only remotely related to the job you're applying, the potential is very clear. When you are talking about something you are excited about, it will show up there. So focus on your strengths and your passion.
Super. And I think we have time for your question, Urian.
Okay, awesome. So basically, I was wondering, let's say I know someone that works at a firm. Is that something I bring up in my application or cover letter, or kind of how do I go about using a contact like that?
Yeah, I can take this quickly because I have to go. But so I highly recommend it. I'm pretty sure the only reason, or I mean, I don't want to speculate, but I think something that helped with getting some of these interviews was on my CV. Even if they're not close friends, even if you just like met someone on LinkedIn and you just have like a 15-minute talk, you don't say they refer you, but you just say like, after talking with blah, 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 I feel like I can really envision myself, but like you're just name dropping. And I feel like that shows, like, even if it's not a direct referral, at least it shows the company that you have gone, like taken the initiative to try to meet people from that firm. And like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to, like, not that many people will do something like that. So I think that kind of stands out. And at least like, I don't know if they do this or not, but like now they have a name, you say their position and name, they could potentially like, hey, did you end up talking to this person? I don't know if they say yes or no, blah, blah, blah. But I would recommend like name dropping. Like, don't say like, oh, they referred me, but just say like, after talking to, like, I think that's like a good way to do it. Unless I'm like totally off. I don't know, Han. Was that like
No, you're not. I would just add one thing. And Ruben, I know you need to go. If you wanted to first wrap up and go ahead. I don't have a meeting right after, so take your time.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, message me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, Ruben. Very nice meeting you. Just to add on that, dropping name is important, but also rationalize why you drop the name. Right? It's hopefully something about that person introduced to the great things the work is about that made you more interested. Because otherwise, the name may not help you directly. Like there are 500 people in DC office, and I interview 10 people during a day. I don't remember who is who. But if you tell a story of, hey, this person told me about this exciting project he did, and I relate to my interest, and I feel excited about also doing something like that, that I will remember. So it's more about the story you tell than a name to go one step further.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for going 2 minutes over. Our Maryland alumni are just fantastic. And I encourage all of you who are in attendance today to please reach out and thank them for what they taught you today and what they shared. Their time is valuable, and we're really, really fortunate to have such generous alumni. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Han. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Ruben. And I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll stick around if anyone has any